Hi, this is George Alger, and welcome to today's segment of Our Ventura TV. Today's topic is STEM, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. And our guest expert today is Peter Godinez, who is an ambassador for STEM. Welcome, Peter.
It is so great to be here, George. I can't believe I'm here and this is actually happening.
Well, it's great to have you, but let's dive right into this topic.
Let's go for it.
In fact, I'd like to even start with, how did you become an ambassador for STEM?
You know, it's a good question because I'm old enough to, in 1981 is when I began my career. And so I had a chance to see the first of technology. You know, I used the mouse, one of the first people to use a mouse, and I can't feel this finger now. The first to use email, the first to understand the World Wide Web. And so just through the years, I'd say that I had the 10,000 hours of practice that the Outliner book, talks about. So I've always been into technology. Always wondered, God, why did you make me so average in terms of academics? Because I really tried, but realizing that I had a gift and I was just going to go with it. So here I am, several years later in the year 2016, and I feel like I know this subject, and I love the way you titled it, past, present, and future. So let me know if you want to go backwards, forwards, but I'm ready to go.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's frame this for our viewers in the sense of how STEM fits into the educational construct in general. Because isn't STEM already a part of education, or hasn't it always been a part of education?
It is, and just as you said, STEM stands for the science, and then technology, engineering, and math. Okay. So back when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s. You knew what scientists looked like. Technology, what was that? Engineering had a certain look. There was a certain profile of person. And then person who was good at math, well, you're probably going to teach math because, what else can you do with math? Be an accountant. But, that is the basis in terms of how it's actually evolved into something that's completely different. And again, one of the questions I think you raised was, you hear this word STEM, STEAM, that is a really important subject, and all I'd say about this at this point, the A stands for art, which I think is a really important item, and some people will say agriculture. So that's what it has to do with education, and those is kind of like the foundation of what people need and what they need to do to get into a living, that they can actually implement quickly without going into too much debt. And that's a whole different other segment.
Yeah, okay, cool. So in terms of the past, it has been there. It is part of, at least in America, part of the educational tradition.
Right.
So how does that differ, if in fact it does differ, in today's terms?
Right. And I think you're probably not old enough to remember, the Apple and, all that type of stuff in terms of how their leader went to Xerox and took a bunch of ideas, created the mouse, the i everything, the iPhone, the iPad. And so both of us have kind of lived through the fact that technology has just totally changed us, from a standpoint of texting and email and instant communication and collaboration. We're not only just a community, but we're also now a global type of company, and there's opportunities globally and just not regionally. So, that's where I think I'm going with all this.
Okay, well then, a question I have is this, because when I've done some research on STEM, and we'll touch on STEAM a little bit in a bit, but in terms of STEM, there's an advocacy of including more STEM in the educational system, which sounds great, but I guess my question is this: has it gone away? Is there a point where it started becoming less prevalent in our educational system?
Well, I would say that in my mind, STEM or STEAM is always going to be the foundation. Okay, it's like the ABCs. What do you do with the ABCs? This is the basics, but it is right now transitioning into so many things. And one of the things I want to say is you're going to have a lot more diversity within STEM. You're going to have a lot more empowered women being engineers, involved in technology, science. But back in the 60s and 70s, there were a few females that were actually in it. You're going to have more diversities in regards to cultures involved in it. It's going to be more specific. because engineers will actually be more creative by their exposure to the art portion of it, so you can see that. So, you know, they all intermix, and I think we all have kind of a leaning towards a strength. You know, for me, it was technology, because you don't want to see my report card, you know, from the math days. And a science, you know, what's a scientist nowadays? Because you can put an adjective on the term science, and there's hundreds of subjects. But I'm talking about the fact that STEM is the actual foundation, but it's growing in our culture, in our world, and as the United States and our culture, we got to continue to bring more people in it, open the portals, and understand exactly where this is going to lead to for people making a living, because the culture is changing. And not to say corporations are going to go away, but you're going to see a lot more entrepreneurs using the skills within STEM, starting their own business, and because of the internet, you know, just being able to provide that. And I remember Steve Jobs I think it was 1996, said, imagine, if you will, people buying products and services on the internet. People thought he was crazy, but look at where we are now. And so every student has an ability to learn how to do business, and they need to get exposure to the science, technology, engineering, art, and then mathematics, but then they need to collaborate and bring people in that have other gifts. So this is a major opportunity in STEM to be able to draw people together, collaborate, and let's get some things done in this culture.
Well, this is a great opportunity to segue into STEAM, since you just mentioned arts. And, you know, when I've looked at some articles on STEM, the idea is we do need to ensure we have a good foundation of STEM in the educational system. And then, of course, arts comes in and makes STEAM, and then I can easily see both sides. Sure, the mechanical sciences part is vital towards technology, but the arts, you know, I can see that it drives everything. You've now alluded to, or actually mentioned, Steve Jobs a couple times, and of course, he also had an arts founding in calligraphy anyway. So to me, I see the arts as equally important as any of the other ones. So then I saw, okay, there's a controversy of whether STEAM and, you know, it should really be on the, or the art should be on the same level as STEM. I wonder if you could speak to that. Sure.
I had thought in some of the people who I deal with that they might be offended if I use the word STEAM, and they're not. They just say it's two different categories. And you know, George, why I think the art, I think is so important, and again, going in the past, you know, the term starving artists, you know, comes up to mind. What does an artist do? Do they work for Walt Disney? Do they do cartoons? You know, art takes on so many different forms, and music and creativity. I got to put a plug out for my wife, Elaine Hammermaster Godinez. She's an art teacher. And you know, whether you have the gift, George, or not of art, once you get exposure to the art, that it changes your DNA. So again, think about an engineer that has creativity, you know, a scientist who's thinking creativity. So I just think art is that one spice that, even though it's not a core thing, it has to be integrated. And some of the leading people who I talk to really believe that the art portion of it is a foundation that you basically touch all four subjects: STEM, you know, technology, education, and mathematics. It has to be ingrained. And you know, again, I'm not plugging Apple, but that was somebody who took science and technology and art. And now look where we are. And I think we all have an opportunity to be creative. And so that's why I think I get excited whenever I hear the words STEAM, and that A factor is so important. And without it, I think it's absolutely boring, George. But what can I say? Who am I?
All right. I want to get to the future very quickly here, but you brought up agriculture as an aspect of STEAM, so I wasn't familiar with that. Could you comment on that?
You know, again, when I say agriculture, I think all of us know the importance of eating, okay? We all need to eat. I'm trying to get rid of the habit. It doesn't seem to go away, George. But we're always going to need to feed ourselves, our neighbors, our country, you know, other countries. And, you know, so the agriculture is real important. Again, what's interesting is technology has integrated into the agriculture. And there is some danger that we have to be aware of, because there is some statement that says anything that can be automated will be automated, which means they're trying to eliminate the human source. But I say the human source always has to be a part of that technology. So the agriculture portion of it is such a vital item. And just looking at Ventura County, I mean, we have the top 50 crops in the Tri-Counties, George. I mean, how could we just totally ignore the A portion of STEAM, you know? So, you know, it plays a very important portion of it, because it involves, you know, the science and understanding how to grow crops and how to grow them healthy, because there's a lot of controversy that they're not being put together. You know, they're mutating. Engineers in terms of the equipment that it takes to harvest, and obviously a mathematician to add your profits and losses and all that. So you can see how it's kind of branching out in regards to now, which I think we're in a transition portion of it, and what the future will look like.
Good. All right, so we have touched on the past and the present.
Mm-hmm.
Speak to the future of STEM/STEAM.
Okay, let me see if I can get into the future and see the future. You know, I'm not a prophet, but you know what I envision, I may have said in the beginning, is the fact that you're going to have people actually educate themselves in the STEM programs online in classes, that the teachers are more facilitators. You know, students are going, you know, I have a complaint, I don't get enough homework. It's because they're doing tutorials, they're taking the best of teachers and showing a subject and seeing what the application is. I never understood geometry, but when you understand that you can figure out the Leaning Tower of Pisa and know how much of a degree is by a protractor, I'm going, oh, so that, why didn't you tell me that in the beginning? So there'll be a lot of education that starts with the end product, you know, at the end, and then working backwards, you know, versus saying, okay, this is your A, this is your B. But you're going to have a lot of kids saying, instead of saying they're going to be scientists, they might say, I want to be a 3D specialist, and I want to be able to produce human hearts out of the same cells that they come from, and be able to put a healthy heart in that matches them. You know, I'll have 6th grade and 8th graders. I have college students who are actually doing that now. 18 and 19-year-olds, George, talking about growing human heart tissue in a petri dish and printing it out on a 3D printer. This is not Star Wars. It's happening right now. So that's what I see the future is. Again, more diversity, more women, more culture. People who come from 2nd generation service agriculture are going to be stepping into the position, and they're going to change the world. And so when I get in front of 250 students, I tell them every one of you has something significant in you. And I'll have them raise their hand and say, promise me that when you become rich and famous, you will still talk to me. So I get a lot of kids going, why you got my hand up? But it works. It's all about inspiring and giving them hope. Because if we keep on doing what we're doing, they're going to go to college, get in debt, look for jobs in corporations, and there are 1,000 people lined up to get that one job.
All right.
Good?
Yeah.
All right.
That was a great response. Thank you, Peter. We're actually out of time.
Get out of here.
It's amazing how
Felt
quickly
like
this
3
goes.
minutes, but I'll shut up now.
Yeah, all right. Well, that's fine. So thank you for stopping by.
You're very welcome.
This is George Alger signing off for this segment of Our Ventura TV. Until we meet again.